faith as a concept, like faith that things are going to be okay, faith that things will work out, faith in general is something people need. But I think a lot of times the only way people find that is through religion because it's a literal faith. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to school, but don't worry, everything is cool. I'm your host, Brandon, and of course, I'm here with the boy, Steve. Say what's up, Steve.
What's up? What's up?
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Things might sound a little different. Julie had to take her mandatory week vacation that we give her once a year.
Yeah.
Literally, like almost exactly a year ago, this exact scenario happened.
We just started we started implementing that. I took my vacation. Julie's taking her vacation, and now Steve needs his vacation.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take one though, cause I'm Mr. No Days Off, bro.
We did a podcast without you once.
When?
Oh, this was our last podcast.
Yeah, you see, you haven't done one.
Not on this.
I'm Mr. No Days Off, bro. I'm the GOAT. Yeah, and I've had my flu games. Last week I had my fucking nostrils all stuffed. I had my napkin. I was all good, bro.
The
Nothing
fans want to see a Brandon and Julie 30-minute classic.
Oh, okay. I won't make a joke. I wanted to make a joke, but I won't make a joke.
All right. Yeah, but Julie's not here today. She's taking care of business, more important than professional podcasting.
That's exactly what I said when you weren't here.
Yeah,
but I don't think anyone gets that reference.
It's a wrestling reference. But our audience is mostly women, so they're probably like nerdy.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. All our women audience, we're gonna make sure that we keep you guys in mind. Julie may not be here, but she's here in spirit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pretend throughout this episode, whenever I feel like she would add something like a woman take.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add in for her.
Her womanly take.
She'll possess me.
Yeah.
And especially because I'm her brother, you'll see her in me.
How did our episode do without her? Did it not do well?
Last year?
Yeah. I don't recall it doing well.
I do not remember. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, but I don't recall it doing well with our fan base. So
at the time, I don't think it did well. But who knows? Maybe it'll do well after this episode. People want more.
People want more singles matches.
Yeah. Well, it's because me and Brandon have been friends since we were like little kids, so we're really good with bouncing off each other.
Yeah, I've known him since kindergarten. So yeah. Pretty good at talking to this
I hope you guys enjoy this. We have some cool topics to talk to you about.
Yeah, and if you notice, I'm wearing a Lakers jersey because today is the day that they're putting up Kobe's statue. So I don't know if any of you guys are going to that. Well, by the time you guys see this, it'll have been a week.
It'll be a week.
Yeah, and happy Chinese New Year. Kung Hei Fat Choi, if any of you guys are of that descent. But it's the Year of the Dragon. Special year for me because I'm Year of the Dragon. But, yeah.
That's cool, man. But speaking of culture, I wanted to get into my first topic. Yeah. So if you're Mexican, you've probably wondered what's everybody's obsession with Dragon Ball Z. Well, there's actually a few reasons as to why that is. And that reason, Brandon, why don't you go ahead and tell me some factual reasons?
Well, it's interesting because how did we get to start talking about this?
It literally was before the show. How did we get into it? Okay. So I was talking about how I have this friend who they feel as though even though they grew up in the United States, they feel like they weren't really Americanized. It almost felt like they grew up in Latin America because their parents did such a good job of sheltering them from the culture here. And I was talking to Brandon about how some of the things they haven't seen is they haven't seen Shrek. They haven't seen Dragon Ball Z, and then Brandon stopped me in my pace and was like, what do you mean? That's not an American thing.
Yeah. Well, because I don't know. I feel like I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people notice because it's a very popular meme that people from Latin America or Mexican descent, because this is where we're speaking from, very much love Dragon Ball Z. And so I looked into that kind of a little bit, and obviously there's not like a peer-reviewed study, but it's actually pretty interesting because and it's actually not just big in Mexico; it's big in Latin America in general. I found that analytics in Brazil found that it's the most popular animated series ever. And then in 2018, 9 out of the 10 regions where Dragon Ball is the most popular, 9 of those are Latin American regions, which is crazy. You would think that it would at least maybe towards Asia, but 9 out of 10. Being in Latin America is pretty insane.
It has to do with the substance, bro. It's because of what you had brought up earlier. It's about family. It's about pride. and it's about fighting for your loved ones. I feel like that embodies the Latin American spirit right there.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. My own personal theory as to why I think it's popular has to do with the fact that there's a lot of like nationalism from Latin American countries. If I have to gear it more towards me, like if you're a Mexican, you know a lot of older Mexican Americans and Mexicans in general have very big pride in the fact that they're from Mexico. And I feel like that coincides with in the show the Saiyan pride.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, I'm a proud Saiyan prince. Because when I was a kid, I don't know why, but I remember that resonated with me. I'm like, I'm a proud Mexican.
Prince.
Yeah, that us. And it was something about that like correlation that really motivated me to like the characters in the show because I'm like, wow, they're just like me. And maybe other Mexicans sharing that
Yeah.
sentiment.
But interesting. That's interesting you say that because I would argue, or not argue, but like I would have noticed that the more popular character is Goku. And
Mhm.
isn't Vegeta the one who's Super Saiyan Pride?
Yeah, he
Or
is,
would
yeah.
you?
No, you're right.
Since
You're right.
since I've never
Seen
would
the
you
show?
would you?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen some of it, but I meant more like been towards. I don't know. I've never been in Mexico like that. Would you say that Goku is the more popular character?
Yeah. I remember one of the famous things because they have their own version of the swap
Yeah.
meets. I don't know what you would call them, like el mercado. Like
Yeah.
they have their own versions of it. Right there, there's literally like tons and tons, hundreds of fucking off-brand Dragon Ball Z toys. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures, bro. You know what's crazy? It's all coming back to me right now. Like as a kid, the amount of figurines that they had, because Dragon Ball Z was so popular in Mexico that they created fan fiction of it called Dragon Ball AF. Have you ever heard of that?
Never heard of that.
It's called Dragon Ball AF. It's where those memes of Super Saiyan 5 and Super Saiyan 6, Super
Where
Saiyan
he
7.
has a lot of hair.
Yeah, he has like black eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
They had a lot of those figures, and I remember thinking like, "Whoa, that's crazy! Like, look at all these off-brand, like trippy, like what if scenarios of Saiyans." And then that was where my brother told me, he was like, "Whoa, you actually know Super Saiyan 4 is real?" And I was like,
really?
"What?" And that's the first time I found out about the sequel series to Dragon Ball Z, Dragon
Yeah.
Ball GT. But anyways, not to nerd out.
Yeah.
We literally, the first thing we talk about is literally like super guy centric.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You could be a girl unlike Dragon Ball Z.
Well, because I also I guess in my extensive research, I found that when Dragon Ball like first dropped, it was actually really hard to get it over to the West because they would censor it a lot.
Wow.
But Latin America and Mexico did not censor it at all, and they were like, "That's pretty cool." So it obviously like it blew up there, and because it was a lot cheaper to just like release a dub and to just import that anime, it's much cheaper to do that than to create their own original. So they just did that, and then obviously it blew up. And I kind of glossed over this part, but I think they mentioned that by the time not the sequel or something dropped, and it was just barely coming out. Mexico had already had like the whole series, so America was just barely like catching up, but Mexico had already seen it. So by then they already had like this head start of popularity and stuff. And then I also found that I didn't know this, but in the current series, Dragon Ball Super, they advertise like fights between characters like it's like a MMA fight or like a boxing match. So they take it, I guess, very seriously down there. And I guess they feed into the hype because, I mean, I don't know how accurate this article was, but they were saying that arguably those characters are as big a staple as Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse are here in America.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos. So as somebody who's an exquisite Dragon Ball Z nerd,
Yeah.
recently in recent memory they made a sequel series called Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah.
And in that series they have this arc, this type of like mini storyline about a tournament. And it blew up so big in Mexico that they actually had like stadiums watching the episode premiere live, and people were screaming and chanting as if they were actually looking at warriors defending our universe. And I'm serious, you should look up these videos. They're fucking insane. It's hundreds of people literally gathered around screaming as if it was like a professional wrestling match, as if they were looking at a UFC fight. People were losing their fucking minds, bro. Like, I'm serious right now. Pause this podcast and look up Dragon Ball Super Mexico reactions. They're fucking insane.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, well, because obviously I couldn't really find like, that's obviously like the statistics and the analytical stuff of why it's big there. But I'm interested as to what about it resonates so much. Like, I don't know. I guess that's just peculiar to me, especially that 9 out of the 10 regions are all in Latin America. And like, it doesn't even mention, because I read them to you. I think the one that wasn't was in Africa. or something like that. So I don't know. I wonder what resonates.
Well, think about Goku, right? He's this guy who's basically
Family.
he's like Superman, but he's the alternate version of Superman because he was also well. I was laughing to myself because I was looking at more comparisons. If you're a Mexican American, if you're a Chicano, I feel like Goku resonates in a different way because he's this alien who landed in this foreign place and then basically assimilated to the people around them.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, I don't know if this is accurate. You could, I don't know, punch me or whatever. But I thought that resonates with me as somebody who is like the parents of immigrants.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was different from the people around me. And I feel like Goku kind of embodies that even if you're different, it doesn't mean that you're like lesser. You could become this hopeful, optimistic guy who's careless and loves eating and loves his family and defends the people that he cares about. And I feel like me as a Mexican American, as a Chicano, that's what resonates with me. Goku is my superhero. He's basically Mexican Superman, except he was made by Japanese people.
He's Mexican Superman from Japan.
Yeah, literally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that. That's wholesome. I don't know. I guess what brought it to my attention is the amount of memes, because it's like, all right, so it's not just like I'm not the only one who notices it, because I've seen the pictures of like tacos al Goku, and then, all the memes where it's like, oh, when I tell the cartel member that Goku would be disappointed in him, and it's like him crying.
It breaks down.
Is that true? I've seen a lot of people float that around.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Should I explain to the audience?
Yeah,
there's a meme going around that supposedly whenever Dragon Ball Z drops something new, whether it's a video game or a TV show, that cartel activity drops in the country. I fact checked it. I couldn't find anything that said it was true. Maybe since then it's been like validated, but I will say that it's that extremely popular in Latin America. I mean, I'm sure even our listeners are like listening to like, oh yeah, like I go down there. There's people wearing shirts. There's piñatas. There's tacos al Goku.
Taqueria Goku.
Yeah, there's like I don't know, in Mexico, at least the region that I'm from, they would always have these carnivals, and on the side of the carnivals, it would be like Elvis, like Pancho Villa, and then Goku.
Elvis.
Yeah. Elvis is big down there.
Is he actually?
Yeah. Elvis is big down there. There's a lot of because those guys are international stars.
Yeah.
It's not anything specific. Like another band that's big down there is the Beatles, but makes sense.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I remember when I was younger, I don't know if other like Mexican immigrants did this, but for some reason, and it's wrong. Like you shouldn't think this, but I was also a dumb kid. I thought that my mom had no knowledge of like the westernized like North America culture. And we were at Walmart once, and there was like this cover of the Beatles. It's that famous album cover where it's like a bunch of like, it's literally like hundreds of people standing, and then
Sergeant Pepper.
There's like maybe there's like flowers and stuff.
Maybe, I don't know.
It's like this big album, and I just thought it looked cool, and I was like, "Mom, doesn't this look cool?" And she's like, "Yeah, it looks cool." And I was like, "Do you know who these guys are?" Like thinking I'm about to educate her. I was like, "Yeah, they're the Beatles." And I was like, "What? What?
Interesting.
Like, you actually know that?"
I guess Elvis caught me by surprise because they say Vicente was Mexican Elvis, so I thought.
No, I mean I'm sure.
Well,
but
I guess I just went that aspect. I thought the niche was filled. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Like he can't exist. They can't both exist.
Yeah,
at the
you
same
can't
time.
have two gods existing at once. You know.
I get you, but no, it wasn't like that at all. I mean, there's other media that I'm sure that my mom like doesn't know about. Yeah. But you know what? I've noticed that I need to stop insulting that intelligence. I think it's just like a prejudice thing, or it's an assimilation thing.
Interesting.
Where I assume they don't know a lot of American culture.
Interesting.
I
mean, interesting. I never really thought about that.
No, I think about that all the time because I wonder how much. You know what I've begun to think about now that I'm adult. When growing up, because my parents didn't know English. Well, my dad does now, but my mom didn't know English. I just assumed that if I spoke around her in English,
she wouldn't know what you were saying.
She wouldn't know anything that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But now that I've gotten older, I realized that I think she does.
Yeah.
She just pretends to keep this charade along. So that way I expose myself. I expose my secrets.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if other people can relate to this, but I feel like sometimes your parents are faking not knowing some English. Hot take.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think sometimes my parents are faking that they don't know English to the extent that they do, because as a parent, I think you naturally want to take care of your kid, and if you can find a cheat code, well, they'll just naturally out themselves. I think that's the perfect way to do it.
Well, it could be that, but I also think about it because my sister doesn't speak Spanish, but she understands it.
Really? Your sister doesn't speak Spanish?
She doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't speak a lick of Spanish.
But you do?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know. We literally like it baffles the whole family how she doesn't speak it, but she understands it. Like, I don't know how that works. I've always been like, I don't get how you understand it, but you can't speak it. Cause like, my madrina, she's the one who taught me Spanish. I know because of her. She'll talk to my sister in Spanish because she doesn't speak English either. And my sister will be like, "Oh yeah, okay," and I'll be like, "How do you get that? Like, I don't know how that is. That a real phenomenon? Can you understand and not?" That's what I'm thinking. Like maybe your mom understands, she just can't speak it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's so weird you're bringing this up because I thought of this literally yesterday. Because I speak Spanish, obviously.
Yeah.
And I understand Spanish, but I can say full-heartedly that I understand it more than I can speak it.
Yeah.
And I was literally debating with myself, how is that possible?
Yeah.
How can I think about it more as the sense of like because I do speak it, sometimes I don't know the word for translations, but then when somebody says it, I'm reminded. I was like, oh, okay, that's what that means.
Yeah.
But that's true, right? The whole, because it's a pet peeve of mine, and I've spoken to this with my girl. I have this big pet peeve of my Spanish, of that when I'm speaking to somebody who is a native Spanish speaker and they can speak Spanish way better than I can. Sometimes I get lost in my words because I'm trying to find the right way to translate what I'm about to say, and they just assume that I don't know a lick of Spanish, like whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's like my biggest pet peeve because it just assumes that somehow, like, I don't know. I guess it's like it assumes that somehow I'm lesser. Like, I feel like this is like a hot take, but I feel like it has some form of elitism, which makes me feel bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, seriously.
I guess for me, like, I can relate to that in the sense of like, I think I speak pretty okay Spanish.
I think you do.
Not enough to get me in and out of trouble, I'd say. But I'm not the best. I took AP Spanish, but you know, and I did decent. But I get what you mean. I don't hate when they do this, but I hate that sometimes I'll speak it. And obviously, if you speak a language, like the way I speak English, like, because it's, you know, I speak it fast. So when I hear other native Spanish speakers speak, to me, it sounds like fast, you know? And I'm like, I know what you're saying and I can keep up, but like, I need to translate it in my head first, you know? I don't really think of it like that. It's just more like, I feel like I'm coming off disrespectful. Like, it's like, I guess to me, I'm like, am I insulting you? Like, by telling you, like, to keep, like, oh, like, I can speak Spanish and then it looks like I can't. Because I don't hear that from them. I hear that from French people. That people in France get really insulted when, like, when Americans come and try to speak French. And I guess, I don't think it's the same thing, like, obviously. But I don't know. To me, I always feel like, am I being disrespectful? Like, should I just be like, I don't speak Spanish? You know?
Yeah, I get what you mean too. And I think what bugs me too is that I think if you look at it vice versa the other way, let's say you had like aunts or uncles who were trying to speak English and it wasn't that well, but they're like, I can understand it, I just can't speak it too well. And for you to be like, oh, like you suck, you know, that sucks so bad. I feel like that'd be such a fucked up way of thinking. Yeah. And that's what I think about when people like look down on people who can't speak Spanish to the fullest extent. Yeah. Especially because, as we've learned through our guests and through just doing this show, like, not speaking Spanish has a lot of historical context. Yeah. Where it was like there were families who were afraid that their kids were going to be harmed, or there were families who were like, I'm trying to assimilate, so I don't want them to like hold on to this language. Yeah. You know, I feel like I get a lot of empathy for kids who can't speak Spanish. Yeah. Because my biggest regret is that I feel like I didn't have a close relationship with my grandma before she passed away, because I was very insecure about my Spanish. And I think we've talked about it on the show with Julie, where because she was also a little deaf, you have to be loud
and confident with your Spanish.
Yeah, and because I wasn't, I was always afraid to speak to her in Spanish because I was scared of that prejudice of like, she's going to think I'm less because I don't speak Spanish fluently. I could be wrong. You know, obviously, for all I know, she wasn't going to put that out on me. But that was a fear I vividly had because I had seen that displayed through my peers and other people. And I think that's a fear that is through a lot of people. So I think it's so fucked up to make fun of people for not knowing Spanish.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean.
Yeah, in conclusion, yeah. But I think about that a lot.
But like going back to the original, not Dragon Ball. The part where it's like that's possible, right? I'm not doubting anybody. I'm not casting aspersions. I don't mean like that. I'm just genuinely curious how that works brain wise. Of like, I understand completely what you're saying. I just can't say it back to you. That's interesting to me.
Well, I keep thinking of deaf people, like people who are deaf. I'm sure they can read lips.
Yeah.
And they can understand like what they're saying. But
Is
if
that
they,
the same though?
I don't know. Well, that's what I'm theorizing right
Because I
now.
think when it comes to people who are deaf, it's not that they can't say it back. They just physically can't say it back, you know? But it's not a lack of physicality. It's more like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
You swear?
what do you mean?
Like
No,
it's not
deaf people-
physical. They can't
well,
physically do that.
You never heard deaf people? No,
No,
like,
I've heard deaf people talk. Yeah.
No. I'm tripping. No. They can talk. It's just because they can't hear. They can't regulate their voice, right? I've heard that it'll be loud or they don't, right?
I actually do not know. Damn.
Well, maybe I shouldn't talk if I don't know. But I don't know. Anyway,
Like, how does that work? No,
Yeah.
that's an interesting topic because I mean, I always talk about that. Well, because I think people also assume it's an excuse. People think that's fake. Like,
Yeah.
I've met people who think that's fake. There's like,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as you can understand it but can't speak it. That's fake.
Yeah.
You just don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, you're just saying that to save face.
Yeah.
But in reality, you don't understand or speak
Yeah.
it.
But I don't know if I agree with that. I feel
Yeah,
like
I
I've seen-
don't agree with
I
that.
feel like I've seen a lot of people. Genuinely, a good amount of people who are like, they
Mhm.
can't. They just it doesn't come out well. But they know what you're saying. You
Mhm.
know. So when you bring up your mom, I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
sure that goes both ways.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know?
also think that if you can speak it, it's hard to understand. And I've noticed this with some of my friends who speak Spanish really well, is that because we've had this conversation about that topic of I can understand it, I just can't speak it,
Yeah.
and they say like bullshit, like
Yeah.
they just can't like understand it, and they're just saying that, and I'm like, no, that's not true. I think it's just very hard if you can speak it.
To put yourself in that place.
Yeah, because it's like, what do you mean?
It's like when people do that. Like, what do blind people see?
Yeah, yes.
And it's like just close one eye.
You
Yeah.
beat me by, bro. We're literally on the same
get
wavelength.
what you
Yeah,
mean.
I was literally about to use that example. It's like trying to describe color to somebody who can't see, right?
Yeah.
Like I can say it, I can explain it, but you won't really understand what they mean when they're like, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like that. It's just very hard to conceptually visualize.
Well, I guess that's an interesting experience because if you've heard that thing, right? Or you've heard of people talk about, they touch on it in Arrival, the movie,
Mm-hmm.
where the language you speak affects the way you think. Like, I've seen people talk about like even if you're bilingual or like you speak multiple languages, like English Brandon thinks differently than Spanish Brandon. Like it affects the way like it's actually like a cognitive difference. I could be completely wrong, so please take that with a grain of salt. But I have heard that the language you speak genuinely affects the way you think.
I think
So
that's
it's like
true. Yeah.
In
Go
that
ahead.
respect, I wonder how just understanding it affects the way you think.
No,
you know?
yeah, I agree. Because recently my girlfriend told me that there's certain languages in the world, I think mainly in the Middle East, where certain words you could say the word the same way, spelled the same way, but they mean different things based on your tone, based on based on the way
Interesting.
you say it changes its meaning.
Interesting.
Yeah, so linguistics is crazy, bro. So I do think that obviously learning a second language like Spanish probably does change your brain chemistry to a certain extent. It also limits you like in music and other art forms.
That's
Well,
interesting stuff.
You know what I find interesting on the subject of media and Mexico? Have you ever heard of when people say they really like Shrek in Spanish
Yeah.
because they say it's funnier?
Well, yeah, because they have some giants in there, right? They have
Yeah.
Eugenio Derbez.
Yeah, they
and
have
then
Eugenio Derbez.
the guy who plays Shrek. He's also Spanish SpongeBob, no?
Really? I did
Yeah,
not
I
know
believe
that.
he's also Spanish SpongeBob.
Yeah, I
so
didn't know that.
I guess-
Yeah, I've heard that supposedly it's funnier. I've seen Spanish Shrek at least to a certain degree. I haven't seen it fully. But I don't know if I fully agree.
I've only seen parts of it. I've seen like that donkey sings no Coco no
yeah.
instead of whatever
Yeah.
he sings in English.
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen that too.
And then they also the part where the ginger man he says ping
Mm.
pong, right?
Mm-hmm.
¿Tú conoces a ping pong? Right? That's what
Yeah,
it
yeah.
says?
Think of that ping pong.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think interesting stuff too. But moving on to our second topic, have you heard of? This isn't what it's called, but to go over the YouTube censors.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Unalive pod?
Yes, I have seen it. I saw it briefly on TikTok.
Were you like, let me order this real quick?
you order them?
No,
I thought you
no,
go
no,
to
no.
like it's like
I'm
a
just
spa.
making a joke. I'm just making a
Oh.
joke. Do you want me? I'll read you the official article
Yeah.
before you talk. The bleep. I'm gonna call it. So obviously, what the word is referring to
Let's
is
see. Let's think of something.
sue.
I feel like we
It
just
starts
shouldn't
with-
say. It. I don't want to get. I don't want to get taken down.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, it's the thing Unalive, but it starts with an S. You
Yeah.
guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The Unalive pod prototype invented as alternative to assisted. Wait, can I say? I can say the D word, right?
Assist. What?
The D word.
TH. I guess we're only being careful because I don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, yeah. We sometimes get demonetized for like the dumbest stuff, so we're
Yeah.
trying to be extra careful.
Yeah.
The Unalive pod prototype invented as an alternative to assisted death.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fine to say.
Yeah.
Cut to like immediately demonetized. Swiss Medic, the country's agency in charge of regulating medical products, has confirmed that the pod has not yet been approved for use. A suicide pod prototype. Oh, I said it. Okay, well, hopefully I said it too fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has been created. The former physician and founder of the group, Exit International, created the bleep capsule machine. He wanted to create peaceful, reliable, drug-free method of dying, and one that could be used in the complete control of even those who have very severe illnesses, such as locked-in syndrome.
Oh, you never heard of that?
No, what is that?
Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No,
Just because obviously there's like a popular like lock-in.
No,
You know what I mean?
I guess yeah.
Yeah. What's locked-in syndrome?
It's basically I saw this actually coincidentally in another case that was honestly really dark. But I think it's you're basically stuck in your body, like you can only control your eyes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you're locked in your body type thing. I think.
Really?
So it's kind of literal. I think like you don't have control over your muscles and stuff.
Should I fact check?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, you should if you want.
No, it's okay. I'll keep reading. Maybe you can fact check while I read
Okay.
this. The 3D printed capsule would give someone who wishes to die legally an alternative to existing legal assisted dying methods, in which patients would have to have a doctor administer liquid sodium pentobarbital. The solution would make them fall asleep after a few minutes, then into a coma, and then eventually die. But machines approaches the concept of bleep a little differently. Speaking to, oh my God, that's embarrassing.
What happened?
A dumb ad just literally popped up.
Yeah.
Oh, they gave me a virus.
Well, I
It's
guess-
okay. It's okay. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. You go ahead. I got it back.
Well, locked-in syndrome is a rare disorder of the nervous system. People with locked-in syndrome are paralyzed except for the muscles that control eye movement. They are conscious and aware and can think and reason, but cannot move or speak, although they may be able to communicate with blinking eye movements. So they're literally
Oh,
locked in their body,
damn.
yeah. That's-
You know why I was laughing? Because I saw this stupid Twitter joke. I didn't know it was a real thing.
yeah.
But somebody's like, help me. I've been diagnosed with this, and it's locked-in
Oh.
syndrome. Get it? Because right now it's
Yeah.
like,
Lock
in,
yeah,
guys.
Yeah, yeah.
so that's why I was laughing. I'm sorry. I apologize to anybody who's suffering. Speaking to LA Bible in 2021, Nitsky said, I've always wanted to remove the role and the need for professional people to prescribe difficult drugs to use. The idea of using a gas, in this case, an inert gas, came up because if you can find a suitable, elegant, and attractive container, climb in and then flood that container with an inert gas like nitrogen so that the level of oxygen rapidly drops, you rapidly go into a state of cerebral hypoxia, which is pretty quick, and you'll faint very quickly and die within a few minutes. At least that's the idea behind it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So basically,
He basically wanted to make a comfortable way of dying, of choosing
Well-
to die. What do you think? Yeah, okay, now.
okay, well, I don't know if it touches on this in the article, but that's for people who are terminally ill, right?
No, he
You
was
can
talking-
just do that if you just
yeah,
want.
if you just desire to die.
Interesting.
Yeah, at least that's what he was saying. It
And
hasn't
this
been
is-
approved yet, but
And this is from Switzerland?
yeah, in Swiss.
I don't know. Interesting. I wonder if they have a different cultural like understanding of
Death.
wanting to do that to yourself. Because I know here, well, obviously here it's a big like you shouldn't do,
taboo.
and you shouldn't. There's always help available. But like I wonder if it's not if there's a different just cultural like viewpoint
Mhm.
on that over there. Because I get if you're terminally ill, or if you have like something you know, like maybe that, and
Mm.
that's, you know, you're like, well, this isn't much life either way. I get that, but maybe this is the American in me, but like that, the other aspect of there's, you know, just kind of wanting that desire and not being terminally ill. That's where I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Well, what I try to wrap my mind around. Have you ever seen the movie Children of Men?
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you remember in that movie they
Yeah.
have
They have the kits, right? Yeah.
yeah, to like commit unalivement.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Unalivement. But in that world, it's explained because the world is basically a hellhole, right?
Yeah.
And the earth has basically become a sort of purgatory.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in modern day,
Let's say that's what it is now.
yeah, that's what it is now, especially which we'll get into at our next topic. But especially with all the technological advancements, people talk about climate change, people talk about like all the horrible things going on in the world. Do you see it as a necessary invention? And that this isn't touching because I'm being very safe. Because obviously, if you're depressed or you feel as though you want to create a permanent solution to a temporary problem, I don't think you're valid. But do you think that with overpopulation and the amount of obstacles humanity has to overcome because of how we've advanced as a society, do you feel like morally, ethically, scientifically, sociology, politically, would you say that the unalivement pod is a valid creation? Or do you think it's just gonna open up a can of worms?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I just think it's a very complex topic because, like I said, terminal illness. I first that's more. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me that feels more palatable. Like I can understand where it's like I have nothing. Like medicine can't do anything for me. They've given me an expiration date, and I'm genuinely suffering. And I kind of want to go out on my own terms. And that, I get that. Because I think that's legal here in California. You can decide to do that. So I don't know if I'll touch on that just because I would argue a lot of people are kind of behind that. Like, yeah, I more like, you know, I'd
Yeah,
say.
I mean, people talk about it. I'm sure even you personally, if you were given a disease where
Yeah.
life was basically suffering, obviously knock on
Yeah.
wood, I think you would think like there's no point in living because it's just constant pain,
Yeah.
right? Physical pain.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I do think a lot of people are behind it. People say it very casually.
Yeah.
I just wonder. I guess I try to wrap my mind around it. Is it ethically okay? Because the same way how people are like, you can't ban guns because people are naturally just some people are just naturally going to be criminals. If like you can't stop criminality that way, is it the same way in people who wish to be like unalive?
I don't know.
Or is that
Well,
just an
okay.
enabler?
Well, okay. Let's organize our thoughts here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're obviously focusing on this if it was to be used if somebody was struggling with mental illness and they decided that's it for me. That's what we're focusing on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess for me, I feel like if that's what you want to a certain extent, you have to be going through something. You know, I don't think. I mean, that's nature, right? Like to want to live is the most basic natural
Human instinct.
Yeah. So to not want to, I would argue something's going on, right? I think we could probably agree on that. I don't know. I personally think no. I don't think that's okay. I don't think I like, you know, and I'll stamp that flag. I don't think that's okay. But I guess for me, like I said, I'm very curious as to how that goes over there. If there's a different understanding of what that's like. Because I don't know. I guess it's hard. I guess I don't know if people maybe don't like a trigger warning if you're going through this, but like, the argument a lot of people say is it's like, well, I'm suffering. There's no cure for it. I don't want to live like this because this isn't life. So how is that different from having, you know?
Yeah, like some form of disability.
I don't know. I don't. I just think it's hard because I think we don't.
I think naturally as a human, this is why I'm having such a hard time trying to really plant a flag.
Yeah.
Is that naturally as a human, if you see somebody who wants to end their life, you want to help, and you think that the only, like you said, if you want to end your life, it's very rarely ever the rational decision.
Yes.
It's extremely rarely ever the rational decision to be like, what will solve my own problems is if I just unalive myself.
Yeah.
Like more often than not, is that not the solution? Like we learned it growing up. We were taught it at school. We've seen it on TV. Even when I Google searched this, it gave me a little warning. We as a society have deemed that as like the ultimate taboo, and with good reason. I'm not saying like, oh, like let's change the culture, right?
Yeah.
So I think we naturally want to help anybody in need who has that desire. But I guess for me, I think about like, is that like ethically okay? Because it's not like you're forcing people in there. And it's not like you're suddenly gonna start promoting it, being like, is life too hard? Step into the pod. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's not like we have bubble wrap around the world.
Yeah.
It's not like we have like everybody wrapped in blankets so you can make sure you don't harm yourself. We have facilities that are like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the world can be argued to be a free
Well,
world to do what you desire. And
I
so would a capsule, would a pod really be any different than, jumping off the parking structure or like drowning at sea, jumping off the bridge?
Yeah.
You get what I mean? And I don't mean it in the sense of trying to rationalize that you should do that. I just mean that those options are there. And is the pod really any different from any other structure?
I guess I get what you mean.
Mhm.
Or I guess I get what you're getting at.
Mhm. And would this just
I feel like people have a very poor understanding of mental health. As much as everybody wants to be like, oh, I'm pro mental health, we're pro understanding. I don't think we're even close. I think we're very far off in having a good understanding of that. That's why I think it's for me, like I'm like I feel like it's just wrong because I feel like we just have a very poor understanding of it. And to me it's like, is it okay to have such a poor understanding of it and that's the solution? Like, wouldn't it be better to put that into better understanding of it? You get what I mean? Instead of being like, all right, well, here you go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reason I would say we have such a poor understanding about it is just turn on TikTok, turn on Instagram. The one I can't stand is, are you depressed? It's because you don't work out. To me, it's like, I feel like that's very dangerous because think of Anthony Bourdain, right? That guy was a Muay Thai like master. He was an insane, like he ate the best foods, traveled, incredible fitness, and he was just depressed.
Yeah.
It's not, I feel like to say it's completely, oh, it's because you don't work out. It's because you don't read. It's because you don't hustle. It goes to show you how poor an understanding people have of what's actually going on, And it's not hard to find. Like, think of Robin Williams, right? That's the one everybody thinks about. Comedian, funny, rich. It's not. It has nothing to do with that aspect. And I think that's what's hard about it is because, yes, sadness is a feeling, and I get it. If you're inside all day and you feel sad, maybe it's because you didn't take a walk. But that's completely different than having a diagnosed struggling issue. And so I really wish this kind of stuff the effort that they put into this, I don't know. I wish they would put that into understanding, more awareness, more
advancements in mental health. I guess
even just awareness. I feel like people really have a horrible understanding of what mental health actually looks like or what, because I think it's romanticized. I think it's nobody really takes the time to really understand it. I think a lot of people say they understand it, but not really. So yeah, like, or even like smaller things that people don't really go into. There's this, I don't know if you've seen him. His name's Jeff Nippard.
He's the science-based lifter, right?
He touches on this one time. I don't quote me. I watched this video one time where he talks about being overweight, and he talks about, is that a choice and stuff. And one of the stats he brings up is like, a lot of people who they're not, I'm not going to put a flag because I don't remember the stat, but being on antidepressants is a very big factor in weight gain for a lot of people, So that in itself right there for the fitness industry or people like that to be like, oh, it's because you're not working out, bro. but they fail to like think about like some people are on antidepressants and are really depressed, you know, like so to tell them like, you know,
To
there's a
give
lot
them a solution that isn't actually gonna solve
or
anything.
like or even that even just medicine, right? I would argue medicine is extremely still taboo for if it's for your mental health. I've seen people say, "Oh, that's the easy thing to do, just pop pills."
Mm.
And I kudos to Ethan Klein because he's always very I mean if you're into podcasts, I'm sure you know what the H3 podcast is. He talks about it all the time that taking medicine is actually a really difficult decision. Like cuz like that it causes weight gain. Like it has serious effects on your health like and for some people it's there like, well, my mental health or you know
My physical.
it's a really difficult decision for a lot of people. So when people are like, "Oh, you know, you're just popping pills, like get in the gym." That's a different subject, but I'm just d- mentioning that to illustrate how poor of an understanding people have of mental health. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm very shaky about this because it's
Yeah,
like,
no, honestly, I mean, hearing you speak about it, I think changes my perspective. Not that I felt like I was, like I said, I didn't really have a flag toward planet, but I think that I don't agree with the Unalive pod.
yeah,
And the reason why I don't agree with it is because I think what it says as a society, it says that we've given up trying to somehow fix like anybody who may be suffering from mental illness, and it's easier to just invent something that's just gonna end it for you than to, like you said, put our energy and resources into facilities or technologies that could help us out in our mental capacity. I feel like I just don't like what that says. Like the more I think about it, I don't like what that says. Is that we can invent something that's like the life this world is better now that we have a way to get rid of people. I
yeah,
just don't like what that says on a moral and ethical
yeah,
way. I think that just more gears us to the fact that humans have become a number, like a statistic, rather than an actual individual. And I don't like what that implies because I think if you're already somebody who suffers from depression, you're right. Maybe, like I was saying earlier, maybe it's not like they're forcing you in there, but they might as well just tell you that your feelings are valid because we invented something that just can do it for you.
yeah,
And I feel like I don't like that message.
yeah. Well, I get what you mean. No, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. Uh, I guess just mental health is just a really hard subject to tackle because it's like it's just hard to tackle. I think.
Yeah, well, because brains are complex, so what everybody's perspective too of their experience living is completely different.
Well, because how do I go about saying this? How do I collect my thoughts? Uh, it's like when people are in that state of mind, or a lot of those things are very complex issues. Like when people bring up like, well, like I'm suffering, like why am I here? Like what, you know? There's a lot of complexities, you know, and it's easy. Not easy. What am I trying to say? I guess a lot of what people struggle with in that state of mind is just very hard to tackle. Some of those are not easy answers, you know? How do you tell somebody like, because I remember, I forgot the guy's name, but he was on Joe Rogan talking about Anthony Bourdain, a guy of
Oh,
Asian
I know.
descent. He's the guy who did the I'm Already Invisible.
Yeah,
That
I
guy,
know who you're
yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
He talks about how Anthony Bourdain would always call him up and be like, I'm just not happy. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why I have all of these things. Like, I can recognize how lucky I am, how privileged I am, this, and that, but I'm just not happy. Like, I don't get it. And that's why I think it's so difficult because it's like, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't sit here and tell you like the physiological thing that goes on with depression and stuff like that. But I think not only is that a challenge, but then there's also the mental challenge, like the mental part of it, right? Like that kind of state of mind. Like there's stuff like that. There's sometimes I think a lot of the stuff that I hear, at least from what I've seen, that people are depressed about. There's not easy answers to that kind of stuff. Like there's this really good movie that I watched. It's a little dark, so if you're not into that, maybe don't watch it. But the guy who wrote Taxi Driver directed it.
Mm.
Man, what's it called? It's with Ethan Hawke. He's a priest, and it's about a priest getting depressed. Because he
Really?
talks to this guy. The movie starts off. There's this guy. He comes to talk to a priest for counseling, and he's telling the priest like, I'm just depressed. Like, and he's depressed because he's depressed about the environment. He's saying
Oh
like,
wow.
does the story, like the kickoff of the story is he's expecting a child, and he says, I just don't get it. Like, how can I bring a child into this world when uh this is gonna happen 2060? Like there will be overpopulation, and there'll be this and that. And the guy's just really depressed, really. He's obviously mentally ill, and the priest is very much like, I don't have an easy answer for that. Um, and the story goes that the priest kind of adopts that mindset of like, man, like that guy's got a point. Like, I'm actually depressed. So I guess all of this suffice to say is that like it's very challenging, you know? So that's why I think it's such a difficult subject to tackle, because it's like, well,
I get you,
yeah.
especially in the modern age. I think Gen Z and the newer generations are very socially conscious,
Mhm.
and we're very aware of the events that happen around the world. And because of that, I think a lot of people are afraid to bring life into this world because they wonder what even is going to be life on this earth.
Yeah.
And I think then relating that back to our topic, it's like I think life itself has become such a hard topic to navigate because of just a real world reality. Like I think a lot of things are just really hard. But me personally, because I'm such an optimist, I always just think that it's better to exist to than to not exist, to have never existed.
Yeah.
I think that there's just a lot of beauty, and obviously that this is coming from somebody who I can willingly say I've never felt depressed. I've never really felt like I've suffered through any mental anguish that put me, like almost in a comatose for a couple of
Yeah.
months. But I am somebody who's an optimist, and I would always say that I think that it's beautiful to feel any type of feelings, because I think feeling nothing is worse than any terrible feelings you could feel.
Well, and I think the point I was trying to make is, listen to how we're talking. Like, look at how we're kind of struggling to talk about this. And I think that's fine, but I think that's the point. Is like, look how hard it is just to talk about it like this, you know? We're like, well, we don't know. Like, it's just it's like a whole diaspora of things that you just don't, it's hard to tackle. So that's why I agree with your take of, to kind of have that. It's more like, well, wouldn't it be better to put more resources into having conversations like this, or educating people? Because I wish there was more education on
Like you
this,
could go somewhere,
or
talk
even
to
like
people.
in like health class, like, you
Hmm.
know, because isn't the number of like kids who are super depressed, like,
Yeah, it's higher than it's ever been.
and diagnosed too, like, it's higher than ever been. Maybe even in health class, offer resources, you know, stuff like that. I get what you mean. To kind of offer that first is very,
I think people look for guidance, and as
yeah,
we become a society that strays away from religion, I think you begin to feel that absence of some type of guidance. And this isn't me praising or dick riding religion. I'm not to at all. But I'm saying that I think that when the world was a lot more religious place, it became a lot. It became very warm, or it was very warm, because you had this maybe belief that there's something out there, guiding you, gonna welcome you into their kingdom once you pass away. And I think as a society, we've seen it statistically, we've strayed farther and farther from God. No, we stay farther and farther from religion, and because of that, I think people are looking for that guidance and something that's tangible and something that makes sense, because people aren't so easy to believe religion.
I don't disagree, but I don't entirely agree. I think this is just more of a different. I have a different take.
Uh-huh.
Um, which is why I think I really like that movie, because it's the priest, you know.
Mhm.
So it touches on that. It's called First Reformed. If anybody wants to watch it,
Mhm.
um, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the religion itself, but I think faith as a concept, like a faith that things are going to be okay, faith that things will work out, faith in general, is something people need. But I think a lot of times the only way people find that is through religion, because it's a
Mm.
literal faith. And
Mhm.
I speak from personal experience, because I've talked about it on the show. I'm not a person of faith across the board. I guess it can come off pessimistic, but I don't think, I try not to be like that. I don't really. I struggle feeling like, things are gonna be okay. I lean towards a more bleak outlook, but in my pursuit of trying to repair that, I consistently and constantly hit religion, because I went to Catholic school. So the only reference I have of what faith looks like is organized religion. And I think for a majority of people, I'm assuming heavily here that that might also be the case because it's a very religious country, and even Latin America, very religious backgrounds. So I think I wouldn't say straying away from organized religion in itself is like, oh, it's because you don't have an organized religion. I think maybe people just have a weird relationship with faith as a as a
Species.
concept.
Yeah.
So I think when you kind of maybe it's just me. So I'll keep it to just me. I think when I was very much like, yeah, I don't really, I never really took to the religion, even in in Catholic school. It never completely set in. But I think in removing that, I also took the faith part too, of like all of that is bad.
Oh.
So that's why I'm like, I think people need to find like a substitute. How do we start talking about this? But
Well, I mean, we're talking about death.
yeah,
We're
sure.
talking about death.
But I think you need to find some sort of substitute. For some people, like it's a science based substitute. Like uh they just have a very beautiful outlook on that. Like life is precious because I can only live it once, or stuff like that. Or for you mentioned it's philosophy and stuff. But I think for a lot of people, that's really challenging to do.
Mm.
So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I look at for me it's also existence. Existence in of itself. I mentioned it a couple episodes ago or maybe last episode. I should get it tatted. I think therefore I am. Like I feel like I'm here. I exist. Like holy shit. Like the amount of probability that I couldn't exist is
Yeah.
insane. But I do exist. I'm
Yeah.
here, and that's something to be grateful for. Yeah, life's not fucking perfect. Life's never gonna be perfect. I'm gonna have moments where I literally just hate the environment that I'm in. But I think about the fact that I couldn't exist, and I'm just so happy to actually be here. And it reminds me of this topic where somebody's like, you ever just think about how you could just do anything?
Yeah.
Like right now, Brandon, if you want to, like,
I can jump out the window.
yeah, you could jump out the window, rip your shirt off, run through town.
Yeah.
Obviously, there'd be consequences. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you.
But I
not-
could, in theory, still do it.
Yeah, and they were talking about how it's very refreshing, and I think that a lot of people should practice more of that aspect because I think depression. I'm not trying to make an easy assumption here.
Yeah.
But I do think one of the things that helps in aiding somebody who feels depressed, is remembering that you have that free will to do a lot of things. You have the free will to take life by the balls. I'm a very take life by the balls person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're on a floating rock, as they say, where we only live once, YOLO.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean hurt the people around you, and that doesn't mean be a complete fucking asshole. But it means that if you have an opportunity to make yourself happy, you take that opportunity. Because if you only have such a short amount of time in this life, then you better do what you can to make sure that you find that happiness. And I think that's a very grab life by the balls approach that I don't think everybody can fully take because of privilege and circumstance.
Yeah.
But I think about that. That's one of the things that at least remedies my understanding and faith in life.
Yeah.
Is that I have the faith in myself, like the faith that I can find and accomplish things that will make me happy and will then I stem off dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, well, I'm happy because I have confidence in myself that I can achieve those dreams, even if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Just the chase itself fulfills something in me, and that's not everybody.
I get you. I think it's just hard because, like I said, I think a lot of people, myself included, have a very just poor understanding of mental health. Like I think a lot of people also come in thinking it's a mentality. Like, oh, just switch your mentality and that's good. But I don't. It's it's just very complex. I just wanted to touch on that. But I think I don't know. This faith thing really interests me. So if I can
Yeah, go ahead,
If
go
I
ahead.
can steer off a little bit, I think because what reminded me of it earlier as I wanted to talk about it was when you mentioned the locked in syndrome.
Yeah.
I was watching this TikTok, really dark stuff. So I'll kind of lighten it up, not lighten it up, but I'll be as vague as possible. It was the police found this girl. She'd been deceased for like 12 years, and her parents had left her there
Oh wow.
for 12 years. And I think the autopsy revealed that she was horribly, like in horrible condition. She had locked in syndrome. I think she had a form of autism.
Oh, wow.
She was basically just there suffering. And they were like, oh, whatever, just leave her there. And they left her there for like 12 years. Just, and the parents were like, who cares? I think in cases like that, that's where I find it very difficult to find faith. Because for me, like I said, turn on TikTok, turn on Instagram, turn on Twitter,
The internet, YouTube.
anything. In a extremely short amount of time, I feel you could find something that will challenge, at least for me, any kind of faith that you have, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. What could that poor girl have done? She had locked-in syndrome. She had autism. What could she have done? And so in my, thinking about that, I'm like, what kind of like loving God, what kind of benevolent universe, what kind of even just aware universe, even if it's not benevolent, what kind of any kind of entity could sit back and watch that happen? And for me, I could argue that's scratching the surface of the depths and the darks of what people can do and the shit that you can see in the world. And that's why I'm very much like, I just can't in any way, shape, or form rationalize any kind of, not faith, but like even scratching the surface of a metaphysical type of faith. Even the people who are like, and this is not a dig to anybody. If anything, I would like to be convinced. Like I think a really common spin a lot of people have is like,
it was God's will.
No, not that one, because that one I also dislike. Is the we're the universe experiencing itself.
Oh, I was literally gonna bring that up.
And sometimes in its experience, shit like that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, even that one, I'm like, well, the universe is a sick and twisted monster if it wants to experience that. And for me, it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't in any sense seem to be able to find, or like karma stuff like that, right? Like if I was a soul, right, and I got to the other side, I would be like, there's no life you could give me that would make up for what that was. I have a hard time arguing, is there even a crime that you could commit that would warrant that type of punishment? So that's why I'm very much like,
I think of it's because when I think of souls and I think of like the afterlife and stuff, I think about it's a perception of understanding, and I think that if we die and whatever we see next, let's say God or whatever, doesn't mean the Christian or the Catholic God, but let's just call him God. God talks to us and it's like, oh yeah, like life meant this. I think whatever life is supposed to be, I don't think that we're able to physically, mentally understand it. Yeah. And I think like cruelty like that, this isn't rationalizing it or making it feel good. Yeah. I just think that if in a scenario where in the universe there is an afterlife and there's a God and everything in life has a purpose and everybody's life was purposeful, I think that whatever the answer is something that unfortunately you can only see when you get there. Yeah. And that's what I think is the most annoying thing. It almost makes it feel as though life is a curse. Yeah. But I just think about that right now people exist like Neil deGrasse Tyson, or people have existed like Stephen Hawking or Albert Einstein, who have a greater understanding of the universe than I ever could. And they existed. And I think they can try to explain to me all day long about quantum physics, about the universe, about what we know. And it just wouldn't click. I wouldn't understand it. And I can only imagine in a scenario where an all-powerful being exists trying to explain to me why a 12-year-old girl suffered like that. I imagine that I wouldn't be able to understand it.
Well, I think that's an interesting take. But for me, and I mean, you can look at the topics I've talked about in the past few weeks. You can see there's a thematic through line. And I guess for me, the part that I struggle with is, well, that might be all well and true. Like maybe I get to the other side, if there is another side, and this entity is like, oh, well, it sounds very it's a higher plan, it's a higher purpose. But to me, the reason I personally really reject that is like, but I can feel the disdain, the anger, the hurt. I feel that like that's real in this moment. So to get to the other side and be like, well, actually, it's this higher purpose. It seems extremely invalidating. It's very much like it's like if I was to like, I don't know, if a toddler was to take a spill over a few steps. Obviously they're fine. Obviously they're this and that. I wouldn't go to that toddler and be like, you just don't get it. Like, wait till you see real hurt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's when people talk about other sides or talk about these entities, it's very much like, oh well, it'll be okay once you get to that higher understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I firmly disagree that just because I'm not capable of seeing that higher plane, that somehow turns the suffering or the thing good. I think to me it's just like that still existed, and that to me is like, you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, I 100% do get what you mean. But to go beyond theory and just know
Yeah.
what I know of that exists in the natural world, I think of people who are born like without the ability to feel emotions, right? Because
Yeah.
there's sociopaths, there's psychopaths, people who are born without the ability to feel certain emotions. And trust, this is gonna connect.
No, for sure. Yeah.
But people who are born, often those people are narcissists and selfish.
Yeah.
And often if you were to tell them you shouldn't be selfish because it feels good to do things for people that you love.
Yeah.
And if you told them that and they had no understanding of what it felt like to feel empathy, of what it felt like to feel love, of what it felt like to be selfless, they wouldn't understand it. And even if you explained it to them, they would not have any interest. And then if you even somehow were able to touch them and give them empathy and give them an understanding of love, if they felt it then, they would be like, I can't even, I couldn't even describe or even imagine what this felt like.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hide it, like what I felt like. Because even right now, even though you love people, there are times you want to be selfish.
For sure.
You have that urge and that temptation to be selfish. And I think about it in that way in the natural world of how, like, I agree for 100%. If you got up there, you would still be like, in the moment, it felt real, and you invalidate what I feel like. But it's just because you're not able to fully like understand what it feels like. I think of American Beauty, right? When he talks about like,
Yeah.
when I died, I finally got to see all the beauty in the world that I couldn't see when I was alive, and it filled my heart up like a balloon. And I feel like sometimes I wouldn't be able to take it, and it would just explode. But then I let it just pass through me like rain.
Yeah.
Right, like well, beautiful line, but
Yeah.
I think of things like that. I just think that, like, if such a complex universe exists, I refuse to believe that I can ever in my lifetime understand it, and I refuse to let it like ground, like, not ground me, I guess, like, lock me in such a human understanding of life. Because
Yeah.
I think that, like, it sucks. It really sucks that, like, people have to suffer. Like, it 100% sucks, and it'll suck for sure if an afterlife exists, and I'm in front of the pearly gates or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're like, it had to have happened because it was the universe experiencing myself.
Well,
I'll
yeah.
hate that answer, because I'll be like, I hope that whatever you tell me, I don't even fucking understand.
Yeah.
Or if I do understand, I only understand because I'm in the afterlife.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I fully acknowledge that I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand it, and I can understand how you feel and how
Yeah.
that's frustrating. But I think, to me, I just keep going back to that. I think it's just so complex, man.
Yeah.
I think as a
But
soul, morality and ethics is just one small speck in the universe of emotions and understanding.
I guess for me, like, again, I really firmly want to like hammer it home. I do not want to change anybody's point of view. And like,
Mhm.
if you believe what you believe, cool. Like, including you. If that's your take, cool. Like, I admire when people have a just they have that, because I don't have that. So I admire that in other people. If anything, me asking and me challenging is my way of trying to join that,
Mhm.
But for me, like, when I hear that, to me, it very much sounds like there's a higher plan that I can't see, you
Mhm.
know? which is common in the Bible. And I haven't read the Bible, but I've I've looked into it to see if I could understand or at least repair that, like pull back the faith
I
part and
get
leave
you.
the
Yeah,
organized. And one of the
I
things
get you.
that I commonly think of is the story of Job, right? If you do you remember that one?
Job, job.
Story of Job, yeah. Well, Kendrick Lamar references it a lot. He says, why God, do I gotta suffer? And then he says something like, every stone thrown at you resting at my feet. I think it's really like intense. I
Mhm.
fucking love that line. But he mentions the story of Job. And the story of Job is it's this guy, it's the devil and God, and they're talking. And and the devil's like, oh, people only worship you because you give them stuff. Take it away and they wouldn't worship you. And God says to the devil something like, oh, look at Job though. Like if I took all of his blessings away from him, he'd still worship me. And so God does. He kills his family, takes away his pigs, just basically torments the guy. And it's one of those Bible things where it's like, I feel like that it doesn't
That wouldn't happen.
not that. It's just more like I feel like God tripping on this one. If this is
Rare L take.
yeah, because at the very end, Job shouts at God like, "Give me an answer. Like, why did you do this to me?"
Mm-hmm.
And God's response is South Park even does an episode about it. Is well, he takes Job to the heavens and he shows him that he says something like, "Where were you when I made something from nothing? Where were you when I?" And he talks about all these mythical over like he's like, your suffering is instrumental in a much grander plan that you can't even fathom, and even if I tried, I couldn't explain it to you. And so it doesn't really end with anything. Job is just like, oh, okay, and then
Mm-hmm.
God gives him back his shit. And so in that respect, I'm very left wanting more because it's like, well, I feel like that was kind of a cop out answer. It's like, well, it just kind of had to happen because there's a bigger plan that you don't understand, and that's what I angers me. And even with angers is a strong word, but that's what I have a hard
Mm-hmm.
time comprehending. But even if it was um the universe had to,
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to experience that, why make me experience that if the anger and the sympathy, the longing that I'm feeling in response to the suffering is going to be invalidating?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making me experience that if you're going to rip it away and be like, actually, don't forget
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
experienced that?
Yeah.
And so I think with a lot of these faith things, there's just a lot of, for me personally, unavoidable holes that I just can't fill. But I will say this. I'm starting to I think that's what faith is.
Yeah.
I think you have to see that stuff and kind of just believe anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think by definition, that's what faith is.
I agree.
You kind of have to take that leap of faith.
Uh-huh.
And then there's
Yeah.
not really like to have all the answers is just assurance. It's just knowing. That's not faith.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you, do you think is it scary to think that the universe is meaningless and when we die there's nothing?
No.
Would you prefer that to be all there is?
I think the reason that I hammer so hard for it is I think there is something. Or I think there
Really?
is something. And I've seen and talked to people that leaves me with this feeling of I really have this inkling in me that there is something. And not only is that not comforting, it's more angering than anything. Because it's like, okay, so there is something, then what is all like
I sort of get what you mean, because
yeah.
for me, I made the decision a long time
Yeah.
ago that I've thought the universe didn't have a meaning.
Yeah.
Life ends when you die.
Yeah.
And I didn't find that scary or uncomforting. I thought it was completely fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'll make the time I have here on Earth completely fine. But like you, there were certain times in my life where certain events happened where I felt like, uh, maybe something is written in the stars or whatever they say.
Yeah.
Something, and I think about it even when it relates to the pod. Like, I think about where I was before the pod really started doing well, and I think about how I never thought I'd be here, or even as as a man. I remember being
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah.
You remember being a kid
Yeah.
and thinking about when the age you are now,
Yeah.
and thinking about how far that was and how it almost felt like it couldn't exist.
Mm.
Yet now you're here.
Mm.
For some reason, those are the moments that make me feel like there is something beyond life. And I guess what's weird is that that's just naturally like that's life itself. That's just growing up.
Yeah.
You just grow up.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it's like a paradox for me where I still feel like life there's probably nothing like after, and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
I don't think, like I said, like the same thing with souls. I don't think that's a negative thing. I don't
Yeah.
think if there's no afterlife
For sure.
or if life inherently has no meaning, I don't think that's a negative thing. I think it's all perspective.
Most definitely. I think like,
Go ahead.
but like you said, I think, like I said, personal experience. I've seen, talked to, and just I think there's something in me that feels there is something. I don't, I do not have a flag planted on what that is. Maybe I'm just agnostic. Is that the word?
Yeah, agnostic.
But I find that less comforting. I find that more upsetting, and I I just don't like that, and that's why I think there's this. And maybe it's from Catholic school. Maybe because I grew up firmly being implanted that there is something, I'm far more susceptible. Who knows? I don't know. But I'm personally placing a bet that I just something else just makes me believe that there is something.
Who knows, bro? Maybe it is cynical. Maybe we meet God and he is a terrible person.
Maybe.
And I don't know,
but
maybe
I think
that's the answer.
But I guess for me, the way I think about it is, I remember it's funny that this sometimes the weirdest stuff resonates. You know, it was one of those clips. It was one of those TikTok clips, and it had Subway Surfers under. But it was this scene from the show House. Have you heard how? It's like that doctor.
Yeah, I know.
House,
Yeah,
right?
House. Yeah, they made a parody Mouse. It's Mickey Mouse.
Mouse.
Yeah, I know.
That's funny. But the clip is like House is like talking to like some a nun, and I forgot what the lore was, but he's being an asshole because I think that's his thing. I've never seen the show outside of that one clip.
Yeah,
but he says something like, God's stupid or something, and he's like, going off on her, and she says something like, you can't be angry at God and not believe in him. And so and she gags him. He's literally like,
she gags him.
She gags him, bro. He's literally like, because I think that's true. Like, if you don't believe, then why are you putting like that fucking energy in any kind of like anger and any kind of like upset?
Honestly, that's what I was thinking while you were saying.
And so that's why I've always known that, because I feel like when I said that, I was like, oh, that's how I feel. I feel like there's something in me that has some sort of disdain or some sort of dislike. But the fact that I feel that and I direct it towards that implies that I have some sort of belief that there's somebody listening to my disdain. There's somebody listening to my bitching and moaning, and I also think of this other, because like I said, I like religion as a concept, and there's this one priest that he has a YouTube channel. I sometimes tune in to see what he says, to like, argue in my own mind, fake scenarios and shit, and he addresses something like that, and he says something like, he used to work at this monastery, and they had this beautiful like statue of the Virgin Mary. Like, and he was like, oh, it's the most beautiful I'd ever seen, like really well taken care of, like roses around, really nice. And he was like, one time this lady came and she started like making mud balls and getting rocks and throwing it at the statue, basically like defacing it. And that all the young like priests and nuns were like gonna be like, oh, stop her, like let's call the cops. But the nun in charge stopped everybody and was like, no, she's praying. And he said he thought that was really profound, because he felt that, he said in that moment he learned that being angry or having like that implies you believe, and it's a form of prayer. And I thought that was weirdly deep, and I was like, you know what I'm saying? So stuff like that interests me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I asked the question of like, is it scary to think that the universe is meaningless and that we die after? I only pose that question because the way you do talk about I think you imply that there is even anything out there. And I feel like it could also, there's a million people who I'm sure would argue, is like, bro, like, why are you even talking about this? Like,
no, for sure.
There's no such thing. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't, honestly, if anything, that one is more comforting.
That nothing exists.
At least in this scenario.
Yeah,
There was a time. There was a time when it wasn't, but in this scenario,
Mhm.
I prefer that. But
Mhm.
like I said, there's something that doesn't.
It just doesn't gel.
Yeah. So
Something always, there's a hand on your shoulder.
yeah, then I'm like, I don't know. You
Get
know,
that shit off
because
me.
fuck, like you know who Stephen Colbert is, right?
Yeah.
He has like a dark origin story.
Really?
Yeah, I think his dad and his brother died in a horrific plane crash.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and he's a devout Catholic, and he was also a philosophy major, and he went to like a prestigious school. He's a
Really?
philosophy major, and so and every now and again he'll have a guest on, and he'll be like debate me with like and it's really interesting stuff because he'll reference genuine philosophical like viewpoints to inform his faith and stuff. But he's done interviews where they bring that up, like how can you believe in a loving God when that happened to your family? And he says his interpretation is something like, what is suffering but not if not God's gifts? So his takes is that the suffering, all that, is a gift in itself too. And I don't know if that I agree, but I think that's a really I'm fascinated by being able to have that mentality of like,
For sure.
because he follows that up with saying, I learned to love the thing I wish most had not happened to me. Because obviously that's devastating, right?
Damn, yeah, man.
And like I'm saying, I feel like what a fascinating ability to be able to have that strength and faith. That's why it fascinates me so much, because I'm like, whoa, I fucking can't do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it takes to get there, but very fascinating to me.
I agree. Well, I think we're going to end off the episode since we don't have Julie here. We're going to make sure this one nice and sweet for you.
Yeah.
This one was really deep, Brandon. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
I would say
you guys enjoyed it.
I know. I would say the only thing you got to put your faith into is Dragon Ball Z, because that's why it resonates a lot.
Or have faith that everything's cool.
That's good. That's good. You know what? Scratch that. Have faith that everything's cool.
Yeah.
You know, because despite the severity or the amount of weight that we have in this conversation, I find it really cool that we can discuss this openly. I hope it allows for everybody to also think about, your relationship with just like how you see life. Because I think that, you know what? No,
Keep going.
I just think that also, I don't think everybody spends time thinking about like existence in this way.
I get why.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, people have jobs and
it's not fun sometimes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine, like even listening to this, it brings up a lot of. If I was somebody in the car listening to this,
I might turn it off. Yeah,
not even that.
Yeah.
I mean, like more in the sense of like it would spin me to think about my own relationship with existence.
Yeah,
because I think what's beautiful and why I do really stand by that everything's cool.
Yeah,
is that because we can even look inward and realize that we exist is a gift in and of itself.
Yeah,
like the fact that we can have this conversation is cool. Yeah. It is really, really cool.
Yeah,
because that's something that's, as far as we know, is a rarity in the world and in the universe. You can maybe exist, planets and stars exist, but to understand that, oh wait, I exist, is such a beautiful blessing. Like Stephen Colbert said, right?
Yeah,
it's that in of itself is maybe a blessing of God.
Yeah.
So, but not to get religious,
Yeah,
because we're both not religious.
Yeah.
As even though this may have
it may have implied that it might be, but I promise you we're not.
Yeah, but a shout out to our Patreons before we go.
Before I send y'all off, shout out to Yuel, shout out to Jada Chicano, shout out to Daniel Villanueva, shout out to Sarah Without an Age, shout out to Carlos. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.
Super greatly appreciated.
And if anybody out there listening ever wants to join the Patreon, our link is always in the bio. We have a lot of great content on there. We had a really cool Patreon episode a couple weeks ago that I really think you guys would enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of just me and Steve. Do not worry, Julie will be back next week if you miss her.
And we have, for the first time of this year, we have a guest.
We have a guest coming on.
Get excited.
Well, if there was ever a sign to end the show, we'll see
right
you guys
now.
next week.
See ya.